This year's Glastonbury Festival will practice some degree of sexual segregation. On Freedom Alternative, we don't mind that on private property, but we do mind the complete and utter hypocrisy of the Marxist feminist establishment. Let's explore. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Freedom Alternative. Okay, let's read a bit from the news because the way it's phrased basically tells you everything that's wrong with both the far feminist left and the busybody liberals who bitch and complain about my equality. So, The Independent writes, quote, "In a historic move, this year's Glastonbury Festival will feature a venue open only to women. Named the Sisterhood, the spot will be hidden in the site's renowned Shangri-La area and is billed as intersectional, queer, trans and disability inclusive space open to all people who identify as women," end quote. Described as a revolutionary clubhouse, the venue's staff, performers and security will all be women. Should you pay the spots a visit, you'll find live music and DJs as well as workshops on diversity. Because nothing says diversity more than an all-women meeting. Anyway, the producers of the Sisterhood believe that women-only spaces are necessary in a world that is still run by and designed to benefit mainly men, the venue's organizers said. Oppression against women continues in various manifestations around the world today in different cultural contexts. Okay, here's the deal. The fact that they're wrong about everything they support does not mean that they shouldn't be allowed to have their all-women event. Their money, their legitimately operated property, their business. The problem, however, is the fact that only the busybody fascist left is allowed to do that. And the so-called moderates, which don't actually exist, the alleged moderates are still leftists, mind you, so anyway, the so-called moderates who complained about the alleged breach of equality over this thing are of no help towards solving the problem either. Quite the opposite. They actually make the problem worse. Now, who would want to go in a room full of far-left cackling cunts to attend a diversity seminar other than for trolling purposes? I mean, it makes perfect sense for them to self-segregate from the wider, normal and sane majority. And I fully do support their right to do so. But here's the deal. I want my right to do exactly the same. I want my right to have a white men's only club to host my own seminar on diversity. Why not? As my preferred author, Dr. Thomas Sowell, has thoroughly documented, people anyway do tend to sort themselves out and segregate voluntarily based on all sorts of criteria. And as Dr. Sowell explained, forcing people to mix with each other when they'd absolutely rather not do so yields completely messed up results. It makes things worse than they had been before. In schools, for instance, mix-matching pupils for the sake of diversity has resulted in a lot more racial polarization than before. And that's not an accident. Any interaction that is not voluntary tends to breed resentment. It's funny that feminists do acknowledge that, but only when it comes to sex. Non-voluntary sex is called rape and is rightfully considered a bad thing. Yet progressives can't seem to wrap their heads around the idea that non-voluntary interactions of any kind tend to yield negative results as well, and sometimes with even more traumatic effects than rape. You know, just ask the whites in South Africa, currently being murdered and legally robbed by a racist government. If you think rape is bad, try seeing your children murdered in front of you by a Negro mob who wasn't even born in the apartheid era, but has opinions and is willing to kill for those opinions on racist criteria. Ultimately, most of these problems wouldn't exist at all if we'd cease to believe in this mythology that people are equal. They're not, and that's great. Because if people had been equal, we wouldn't have been able to celebrate diversity to begin with. Men and women are not the same, and it's perfectly fine for women, including far-left cackling cunts, to organize themselves in a women-only space. Why should it be anyone's business? It's time we do start acknowledging that diversity is good only insofar as it's voluntary. It's not really a hard concept to grasp. Switzerland, for instance, is one of the most culturally diverse countries on earth, but that doesn't stop them from having French-only institutions, Italian-only institutions, and so on and so forth. That's diversity at its finest. The salad diversity, mandated through the violence of the states via anti-discrimination laws, is not diversity at its finest. It's a recipe for conflict. I thought leftists don't want conflict, yet their ideas are the most likely ones to lead to conflict, whilst our ideas are the most likely to breed tranquility. Yet for some reason, we are the warmongers and the haters. Amazing. Anyway, if I were in Britain during that festival, I'd go there and say that I'm a woman. And if they deny me entry, I'd sue them for discrimination. Until we start using their weapons against them, there's simply no way to wake the onlookers up to the insanity that is the politically correct establishment. Just saying. Anyway, so with that being said, thank you for watching and thank you for your continuous support of this channel. As you're watching this, I'm probably somewhere in the middle of Ukraine. Anyway, talk to you soon.